desktop. So I want to start off, because this is the first class on the tarot, to go into a bit of the history of the tarot and come to a common understanding of what it actually is, what a tarot is. Modern decks can be traced back to about the 1400s. Actually, even further back. So there's a strong connection between the Visconti family and the sort of like occult resurgence in Milan and so on and so forth. So it actually began in around 1100. I'll show you a picture of their coat of arms a little bit later on in this one, but one of the oldest tarots available right now is traced back to about the 1400s. Now, so that's the history. According to legend, then as the story goes, it stems from a book that was housed in the Library of Alexandria, which is no longer around, consisting of 78 books, or 78 tablets, I should say, and sometimes referred to as the Emerald Tablets of Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes Thrice Great, or sometimes also known as the Bembrine Tablets. But, pardon me, it begs the question. Did someone ask? Okay. Begs the question, what is a tarot? The way that I think about it is a tarot is a book of philosophical and psychological content that uses pictures instead of words. In other words, and I guess here's why I think this way, because if you think about, if someone reads a book, especially a book on an esoteric or occult type of subject, and they don't fully understand it, but then go to make a derivative work off of it, errors begin to propagate. And when it comes down to pictures, if someone just goes to copy down a picture, even if they don't understand it, if they have a degree of artistic ability, in other words, the ability to copy the picture, they can help promote it into the future without losing, I guess, any of the content of it, even if they don't fully understand it. And so, you know, the expression, pictures worth 1,000 words, I believe that it's especially true in the context of a card in the tarot. Now, fundamentally, pictures consist of colors, numbers, and symbols. And we'll see a bit later on that these three aspects really play an extremely important role in understanding the natural worlds and the natural laws. But I want to talk for just a moment about the difference between subjective and objective art. To put it simply, subjective art is based in the who of a person, whereas objective art is based in the what of a person. And how this shows up is that if someone puts together, a painting that is based entirely in just their personality, then it can have a random impact or a random effect on anyone who views it based on whatever's in their personality at that time. But where I draw the distinction between objective art and subjective art is that if someone is actually creating a piece of art from the what of them, in other words, from the essence or the essential part of them, then it can be expected to have the same result and stimulate the same feelings, stimulate the same thoughts, stimulate the same emotions and the same types of connections to anyone who experiences it. I'm going to give a couple of examples, and there's no right or wrong answer here, but I would like any of you who feel so inclined to just chime in and say if this feels like objective or subjective art. The Taj Mahal is what this is.
Objective.
Subjective or objective? Objective.
Objective.
Yeah. Why would you say objective? Well,
Because it it's an unpredictable effect, especially with the energy and with the designs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Who here has been to the Taj Mahal? Anyone?
In my dreams.
In your dreams? Okay. Astrally then perhaps? So if you actually go to the Taj Mahal and are very observant and watch people, now I am going to separate out like groups of tourists that are just there on a tour guide of like, you know, rip through the Taj Mahal as quick as possible, from the ones who are going there to actually intentionally see something or feel something or experience something. Because that actually just generates an openness. But what you'll watch or what you'll notice if you ever have the opportunity to go is that people will walk up to the entranceway in a certain speed and a certain cadence and a certain rhythm that is what I would say endemic to their personality, to the what of them. But about 15 feet in, once they actually enter the atmosphere of what the Taj Mahal represents and what it holds electrically, you'll watch them and their speeds slow down almost in half for most people. And they begin to, it's not just because they're looking around and that type of stuff, it actually has this kind of really slowing down effect. For a whole nother time, a whole nother talk or lesson or whatever, into some of the esoteric meaning of the Taj Mahal and what caused it to be. But yeah, okay, I'm gonna switch now. What do you think? This one, this picture, this is, I believe this is a Picasso. Subjective or objective?
Subjective.
Subjective.
Subjective, yeah, for me too. Right, I look in and because I play guitar, I see those lines as guitar strings somehow, and somehow this makes me feel like there might be a musical component to it, along with roses is what I see. But you know, it's all kind of coming from not my essence, but what I carry in my personality. In other words, those influences that I've been subjected to since 3, 5, something like that years old on. So I would agree. How about this one? This is an interesting one. This is called La Primavera, and it is by Botticelli, I think.
Yes.
Yes, La Primavera. How does this one strike you? Objective or subjective, and why?
I'd have to say subjective on that because I'd like to know what was going through his mind at the time.
Good. Any other? Yeah, I agree. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in just a moment. And it might kind of open things up a bit. Who else wants to chime in? Subjective or objective? And I'm not, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just making this interactive and live and fun.
Subjective, because it's his impression of what spring is.
Ah, okay. Anything else? How do you feel? How do you feel when you watch this? I'm sorry, Bob, say again?
It strikes me as objective. Just is very, each of the figures is very literally portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
The trees are literally portrayed, the fruit, the cherub.
Okay, objective. I'm going to ask a more difficult question. How do you feel in you when you look at it? And I'm actually specifically talking about emotions and or religious inclinations.
To me, it's celebration of new life. As the man holds his hand to the top, releasing the past from the past, and the ladies dancing around, celebrating the birth or the rebirth of spring or a new season.
Mm-hmm. So
Makes me feel very much at peace and
okay.
happy.
Very much at peace. Good. Who else wants to give kind of a 1 or 2 word feeling / being sensation of what it causes in you when you look at this?
There's a reminder that there's something to be feared, because if you notice all the way to the right-hand side of the picture, there is something that almost looks like a tree grabbing that person.
Mhm.
Everybody else is enjoying the day and dancing and having a great time. But then one of the people is actually being grabbed.
Mhm. Yes,
It makes me feel contemplative.
contemplative. In a religious sense or in an intellectual sense?
Well, I think I'm looking at it more as almost like a symbolic work. So it's more allegorical than anything to me. So to me, it's a bit more academic.
Right. Okay.
See, for me, it's
Subjective or objective then for you, Edmund?
I guess technically they're objects, but I would actually put it in the subjective category because it's not a literal interpretation of an actual event.
Good. Okay. Anyone else want to chime in, and then I'll go through just a bit of what's actually hidden in here.
well, for me, it's rhythm, it's dance, and it's
Yes.
movement,
Yeah,
and it's
that's right.
phases and cycles. So I really resonated with it because it feels like a process, and knowing that it's spring, it's part of the cyclical process.
Right. Okay.
The subjective,
Subjective or objective?
subjective.
Subjective. Okay. Let me tell you kind of what I see in here. Let's see. I think I'm discovering new things about PowerPoint here. Can you guys see this laser pointer here moving?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Good. This is when we get into the ray of creation. First of all, has anyone heard of the term ray of creation or been exposed to that concept in the past?
Yes.
Okay. So this is actually a depiction of the ray of creation. If you look at it, the way that it's demonstrated, starting down here with this figure in green, and the moon is often represented in the color green in ancient art or older art, I should say. Also holding its breath and pulling, right? You've got this kind of the growing end of creation. In other words, I shouldn't say the moon because it's actually, if there was something behind the moon, in the ray of creation, the concept is that, it starts off with the entire universe and works its way down to the smallest subdivision, galactic subdivision, which would be a moon. And the moon being the growing end. So in other words, something kind of pulling, dragging towards that. That would be also represented by the note do. The next one would be the moon itself, that is as that kind of draw, but also you'll see that the moon
Very interesting.
is clinging to what would be the note mi, do, re, mi, in there, which would correspond to the planet Earth. The next figure over would be fa, or all planets, and its correlation in there being is very esoteric, actually, in the sense of what that transition point represents between the note mi and fa. It also corresponds to the missing semitone, which is why you have the cherub directly over the head of fa there. And then you have the three sisters sol, la, si, all connected and joined in a kind of a harmonic dance, which would be represented by the sun, the Milky Way galaxy, and the entire universe. And then this male figure facing the exact opposite direction, representing do of the next octave. Now, there's also symbology in the fruit, in the dress of each character and why they're in specific colors. I can draw your attention to the floral dress of the symbol for the planet in there, being that she is covered in that thin film of organic life, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to belabor this because this isn't the point of this. However, I would consider all three of these pictures a tarot of some sorts, depending on what a person is connected to and what a person is actually able to see in the tarot, right? That's why I brought them up. Now, I talked about the aspects of color, number, and symbol before, and the point that I kind of want to drive home is that everything everything that demonstrates itself at planetary level for us takes on three kind of aspects to its nature. It takes on a color aspect, it takes on a numerical aspect, and it takes on a symbolic aspect. Now I'll give you examples of that. So starting with symbols, the two most readily easily seen symbols in nature that occur all throughout nature are the cup or cone and the rod. Okay, and the rod is almost universally transmissive, and the cup is universally receptive. And you can see this in everything from, you know, the genitalia of species all the way from humans down to plants, to if you've got the kind of sensitivity to be able to, like, for instance, detect or feel or sense with your hands or cheekbones or other sensitive aspects, the energy coming off of, say, an evergreen tree, and compare that to something like those ancient plants that have the big, broad, sweeping leaves. That's what I mean by symbol. And I like to refer it back to natural symbols, first of all, but then those two most fundamental symbols end up becoming things like letters in our alphabet, which have cups and rods all throughout them, become the symbols for numbers, become planetary symbols, and so on and so forth. Colors, pardon me, also have meaning in nature. You'll probably find it interesting that, just as an example, that most things that have a reddish or orangish tint to them, for example, in nature, typically have some sort of poisonous or deadly aspect to them. And, you know, reptiles and spiders and so on and so forth tend to warn other creatures about their deadly or venomous aspects by demonstrating a color, by demonstrating that kind of bright red or orange. Someone once asked about apples, and apples are a great example because they do actually in the seeds have a toxin inside the seeds. It's not good to eat the core. Tomatoes are another example. Tomatoes are kind of tricky. Actually, people didn't eat tomatoes until fairly recently in human history because they're related to deadly nightshade as far as the family that they're connected to. They just happen to not have the toxin and poison, but they still have the demonstration of the deadly nightshade. So anyway, this is diverging a bit too far into color, but what I'm trying to emphasize is my standpoint on color as first stemming from nature and actually being an indicator of the electrical and unseen contents inside of something. And then number, the last one. So we have color, number, and symbol. We, as human beings, are pentagrammic. You know, if you stand up like this, I don't know if you guys can see me or not, but if you stand in the shape with outspread arms and legs, you form a pentagram. And very, very, very many foods, especially fruits, for example, if they are edible for humans, have some sort of pentagrammic demonstration. You cut a banana, you know, this way, and you look at it, and there's like a little star in the middle. Same thing with an apple. And so that's where I'm coming from the standpoint of numbers, colors, numbers, and symbols. And in part of the process of the eminent way is really engaging in, I would say, a love affair with the natural exploration of these types of things. And so quite literally, I would encourage each of you to do this too, if you wish, but quite literally, going out into nature, or even just while you're driving your car and just being very, very observant of things, pick a number, pick a color, pick a symbol for the day, and just try and begin to collect examples of it. And, you know, then it's not just pure saying, hey, 5 is represented of this, you know, blue represents this, so on and so forth. But you end up having a personal relationship with those colors, numbers, and symbols. And it begins to, if you collect enough examples, it begins to reveal to you what their actual nature is. So yeah, any questions on that? So my point in this is that in order to understand tarots, and you know, I'm using the Frown tarot, which I'll get into in a little bit here, but in order to understand any tarot, whether it be a work of art or anything, the more of an internal connection and resonance you have with color, number, and symbol, those aspects of a picture, then the more you'll be able to kind of detect and see and understand within some of these things. Now, I've got some curios or some oddities that I'd sort of like to open up. Why do you suppose it is that people tend to have a favorite color, but don't tend to have a favorite musical note, for example? Like, what is it about our being that encourages that we have this kind of propensity to color?
Colors represent emotions a lot of times. And
Dead on. You are spot on. Yes, go on.
yeah, it's I do color therapy, so
Perceived through your
Well,
eyes
then
too. So that's,
you're the expert on this. Good, keep going. What do you mean?
who, me?
Yeah. Yes. Whoever was speaking, I don't see who's lighting up right now because my screen is over here.
I was speaking at once.
Okay. Who's talking about, I'm sorry, please tell me who you are, because I have like little bitty pictures right now because I'm sharing this screen.
the color therapist, the color therapist.
Yeah. Who's the color therapist?
Oh, Elizabeth.
Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are tied to emotions because they are part of the fuel system that fuels the blood and the astral body and the higher emotion, which are all kind of interconnected, intertwined in there.
Right.
Also, the fact that the soul, which is the kind of another term for that astral body or the blood content in there, is fueled by color from the planet. So yeah, it's sort of that easiest to feel standard issue aspect of the human complex. What about musical notes?
I have a question about
Yeah.
color. Does it have anything to do with the senses by which it's perceived through the eyes?
Yes.
Well, it does, from the standpoint that color is an indicator and a cloak of force. So for something to appear here at
Hold on a
planetary
second.
level, it has to kind of take on a density. You know, if you have something that's just energetic in the unseen worlds outside of planetary level, and it has to manifest here, it has to take on these cloaks of form. And the first one that it adopts is color. So your question, yes, I mean, if it's perceived through the eyes, it's going to go into a particular center. If it's perceived through the hands, it goes in kind of a different way, and so on and so forth. Does that answer?
So I'm curious about, like, if it truly is about how we perceive color through our eyes. I'm sure we all kind of remember that image from a few years back of, like, what color is this dress?
Yeah, right.
And so would that then affect how you view the emotion of that card? Doesn't matter if the artist drew it in whatever color, if your eyeball perceives it as a different shade, your emotion to that card is going to be completely different.
Sure.
And
So I should say, first of all, optical illusions like that don't, to my knowledge, occur in the natural worlds anywhere. Usually nature is very transparent in its expression of color and what forces it contains and what kind of essences it's connected to in there. It's a really cool question to think about. I'm not entirely sure, and I think I would have to look at what color is this dress.
No, I mean, do you remember because it was that one. It was like some people saw it as blue and some people saw it as green, and so like even like my walls of my house, some people are like, "Oh, it's a dark hunter green," or actually it's a blue color.
Yeah.
So it all just kind of depends on how your optics are working.
You know what I would say to that, because the Eminent Way is a very experimental or experiential path. I would say the best answer to that is give it a go and report back and let us know kind of what you're seeing, or whoever wants to wants to engage in that and try and get to a deeper truth about that. I think it's
may I say one more thing, please, on that?
Yes.
what I do is I take construction paper and I put it up under my clients' chins. They have to close their eyes. They can't see what color it is. And then they have to tell me how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
So if they feel yucky, then that goes in the no pile. If they feel good, then it goes in the yes pile. If it goes maybe, if it does not look good on them by the audience, then it's a no pile.
I see.
All of my students have done this over the years, and they have totally changed, because it's not just the sight, but it's the feel, the energy that your body energy grabs onto those colors.
Yeah, it's like almost like a version of like muscle testing and stuff like that. Right?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
That is fabulous, Elizabeth. I'm going to try that out.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
So how is that that many people or most people have blue as their favorite color more than other colors? What is that, or why is that?
A lot of times the colors are very significant. Blue is calming and peaceful. Purple is majestic and connects with the higher self. Yellow brightens and gives you happiness. Orange is a neutral color, pretty much. It's a happy color, but it's just kind of neutral. So there's different levels. Black and gray are really bad, so you don't want any of those. But yeah, a lot of people do wear the blues, the greens, and the purples.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Fascinating. Let's do a whole thing on color one night.
Okay,
Sound good?
sounds wonderful to me.
I'm gonna go ahead and move on. So basic facts about the modern tarot decks. I think we've already established what a tarot is, but now we're talking about what we find as far as tarot decks. And I've got the Frown deck here. Consists of 78 cards. 52 of them are what we consider our ordinary playing cards today. In tarot decks, there is an additional suit of the knight, and the ancient tarot decks started off with wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, which became clubs, hearts, spades, and diamonds in our modern deck. In addition to those 4 suits, there are 22 named cards, which are called the major arcana, or arcana, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And the tarot is divided into 3 parts. The first part is the 21 numbered cards of the major arcana. The second part has a single card that stands alone. It's oftentimes referred to as card 0 or the Fool or whatever. And then the third part is the 56 remaining cards, 14 or 4 suits, 14 cards each. The second one, the card numbered 0, is kind of the connector so you form this sort of triangle, okay, of the 3 different aspects of the tarot in there. Now, let's talk about divination. This irritates people. Yes, someone has a, oh, did you have a question, Karina, or were you just like happy to see that?
I was just going, Zoltar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zoltar. Yeah, I'm throwing a bit of humor in there. So the tarot, only recently has the tarot actually been used in a divinatory context. And I really want to emphasize that if a person has divinatory ability, it comes from inside them. There's no specific or special power that a piece of cardboard has to tell your future. It comes from inside you. And what that means by implication is that someone who is very, very skilled in reading tarot doesn't actually need the cards. When I was much, much younger, because I've been into tarot for maybe 30, 40 years, something like that. But anyway, when I was much, much younger, I used to go down to the mall in Boulder, Colorado, where I grew up, and do tarot readings. And I got to the point where I started just using blank pieces of paper as an experiment and still coming up with very good tarot readings, right? So this is what I'm emphasizing in here, that it's not about the cards, it's about the development level that the reader has within themselves to have that divinatory nature. in themselves. If,
Doesn't seeing the symbolism and the imagery and the color and the whatever comes in as sort of by chance from the cards, doesn't that sort of give clues or pathways or ways to divine? You know what I'm saying?
yes, if it's already in you. What I mean by that is that, you know, if you have taken the time to understand the deep symbology within a particular card or within a particular tarot deck, and you've also gone on sort of the personal development journey that it takes to actually get those essence connections to the various colors, numbers, symbols, and cards and essences that attend those, then yes. But here's the thing. And it's not provable, so I almost hesitate to say it, but here's the thing. If you had 22 blank pieces of paper and you had that kind of connection, as you laid them down one after the other, you would already, because of your connection, have that knowledge of which cards would be coming up. Now, in the case of giving a reading, then yes, you're right, because those energies, kind of this, you know, how do I put this? Going from the abstract to the specific, or going from chaotic to pinpointed when you're doing a reading, is what's happening as you know, as you collect these cards. I wish there was a way to scientifically prove this, that in any given moment that you know could, well, actually there is, isn't there? You could leave the cards all upside down and do a reading and then turn them over and see if you're right. That would be the
See
way
how
to
good you are.
do that.
See how close they are.
Yeah.
And that would definitely, you know, separate the two, the ones that are like not truly divine, right?
For sure. But so the other aspect of the tarot, and the more ancient one, is that it can be used as a kind of a guidebook for a personal development journey. In the sense that as you develop these connections, you switch on and you become more clairvoyant, or you know, begin to have these types of abilities because of your connection to these really what are in essence forces in nature, forces in the universe, and forces that are around us all the time. Laws, I would actually call them, not forces. Through the understanding of these laws, then there's also the aspect of, it's not really clairvoyance, it's esoteric mathematics. You begin to be able to predict things that can happen because you start to see the bigger picture of, you know, like if you understand the law of 7, for instance, with a kind of depth, you'll be able to identify at what position any sequence of events is in that process. But the key elements in the understanding of a tarot are threefold. Number one, there's you. There's your own inner understanding of the symbology and the colors, numbers, the inner meaning, right, of each card or of the deck. So there's your own content. There's also the content of the author who engineered the deck in the first place. Because if they were at a lower level, for example, than what you've achieved or where you're at in your development journey, then their understanding of the symbols, colors, and numbers that they place into the deck may not actually correspond to your own understanding. Vice versa, it could be higher, and so that would be a learning opportunity. And then there is an aspect of what particular decks will actually connect to in the astral light. It seems now if you go into any metaphysical bookstore, there are dozens upon dozens, and especially if you go online, there are hundreds literally to choose from. And it's difficult to tell exactly how people are using those. And usually, you know, when a person gets a new tarot deck, then they read the booklet and there's certain types of instructions on how to do this. But in my experience, having dealt with different tarot decks and all that type of stuff, some of them actually just have a cleaner radiation, have a more peaceful and harmonious radiation feel to them than others do. And so that's a third consideration. And it's not really even a judgment thing, it's more of a detection for your own systems. Questions there?
Yes. So I misplaced a tarot deck from 40 years ago. Have no idea where it is, and I'm looking to buy one. What would you suggest as a complete nascent person, a beginner, that I do. Just go in and feel resonance with something or not and say, this feels right to me.
Yeah, yeah, I really would, unless you're very, very good at mental precasting, which is the ability to, let me back up. So being able to send lances of force, or what they call mental hairs, mental threads, out of the brain and mental capacity to connect to something in the unseen worlds, you could do that through the internet and look at a couple pictures and be able to get that sense of it. But what I would really, really recommend is going into an actual bookstore, holding them in your hands, feeling them, see if it resonates with you. You know, I'll tell you this, like that's how I used to shop for books. I would walk along with my hand and not look. I would just walk along with my hand. And if something felt kind of the right frequency, then I would look and see what it is. And sometimes I would really surprise myself, but I was never wrong. It was always something really, really pertinent to
So now in our age of social isolation and stuff, how would you think people should do that? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. You are correct that it's not as easy right now to go into a metaphysical bookstore. So,
May I make a suggestion on that?
Sure.
What I've been telling people and what I do myself is I do go online and I take the time and I ask, is this for me or is this not for me? And you're going to feel that, just like you do with the hand over the books and everything, to pick the right one. Same thing online. You can feel the energy.
Yes.
That's
Well,
how
you have that ability to kind of cast. You're right.
Well, I do Reiki, so I'm thinking that I can use the energy from Reiki. And that
totally. You can even do like a yes/no pendulum thing, kind of asking.
You know what's interesting too about this? I mean, we live in an
energy.
era where you order something on Amazon, and if you don't like it, you just stick it back in the box and ship it back. So you could potentially do that. Yes, Karina.
I was going to mention, it kind of matters, I think, if you're planning on just using the major arcana cards for divination or if you're using the whole deck, because a lot of the traditional decks up until the Arthur Waite decks from Pixie, Pamela Coleman Smith illustrated at the beginning of the 1900s, all of the hit cards didn't have an illustration on it. Like the 4 of coins only has 4 coins on it. So there's no sort of pictorial prompts. There's no real overt symbolism that would invoke you to feel something or like spark your memory. So if you're going to shop for one online, there are websites where you can look at images of different decks and you might be able to get a feel for whether you're going to be able to work with the ace through 10 out of each suit.
Right. Yeah, and I will say this, that the pip cards or the minor arcana they're more subtleties in frequency. They add color and tone to it, but just modify the major influences that are at play in there. So yeah, you're right. But I mean, really, you could almost get away with a deck of cards with 4 additional cards, like a deck of just regular bicycle playing cards. They come from the same place. But yeah, four jokers or something, to indicate the others in there. But no, that's a good point. Very good. So I'm going to introduce you to the Tarot of Frown. It's a fairly unique deck. It's also extremely scarce at the moment. It was created in the 1970s, actually as an addition to a book called Frown. And the Eminent Way came out with a few different books at the time. One was Gemrod. They produced a tarot deck for Gemrod. They produced a tarot deck for the book Frown, and one for a book called Dear Dragon in there. But this is the one that we'll be working with over the next 11 weeks if you choose to continue to attend. They're very rich in color, very rich in number, very, very rich in symbol. And I could it's not even an exaggeration that I could probably spend a good year on each card, just one at a time in there. But, you know, we're not going to take 22 years to to do these. So, yeah. So yeah, let's launch into it. First of all,
What would the year
this,
allow you to do? Sorry.
go ahead.
What would the year allow you to do? Fully explain the meaning, the symbolism, how you might use it? What would that year allow you to do? Okay, just
Yes,
curious.
all of the
Thank you.
above. There's just so much packed into each card
Uh-huh.
that you could probably spend a good year just exploring and really getting a strong connection to the essence of what's behind each card. Yeah.
Okay.
So we are going to approach the tarot, and specifically the tarot of Frown Strong, in the next, I think, 11 weeks in a particular way, more along the lines of looking at the message in it from a person who is on a personal development journey, as opposed to it being, you know, I'm going to do readings and we're going to talk about, you know, the future and so on and so forth. We're not going to go there. I'm going to recommend that we take a law of two approach, meaning that each card has its sort of adjacent aspect to it. I would, in the case of card number 1 and 0, it is a, it's not an opposite, but it is thesis and antithesis, and we'll get into that in a moment. Card 1 being the juggler is what it's called in this deck, and card 0 being the fool, or the card of negation. We'll talk about it. But so we're going to go card number 1 and 0 in this one, and then number 2 and 21, number 3 and 20, and so on and so forth. And if you have any tarot deck that's laid out in kind of a standard fashion, you're going to start to see quite a relationship if you take them opposites, working your way in the major arcana. Okay, so that's how we're going to approach it.
Just a quick question. So
Yes.
why did you choose this particular deck versus like a deck that would have been older before people began using it for divinatory purpose, like kind of using something like a Visconti?
Yeah, because at most only about 4,000 people worldwide have ever even touched this deck. It's so scarce, and it was always used as a in the way that we're going through it in this way, instead of in a, you know, strong divinatory way, or certainly never used in magic with a K practices, those types of things. And so its connection in the astral light is still very kind of pristine, which is the reason why I'm choosing this one.
And can you spell the name of that deck, please?
Yes, Frown Strong. I don't know. Here, I'll hold it up. Can you see me, or can you see my camera?
Yeah, can you put it more towards the camera?
Yeah.
I can't quite see it.
How's
Wait,
that?
hold on. Let me see if I can. I can't advance it.
Here, tell you what. Here, let's go back. Can you see that on the screen there? The picture. It's Frown Strong.
Oh, there we go.
Or even in the title of this slide.
Correct. I got it.
Okay.
Thank
fantastic. Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, so we're going to talk a bit about the juggler. It deals in many forces and operates in many spheres. The motto of the card is "By art we live." Yeah, I'm just going to get rid of my laser pointer here. He has the mark of a highly skilled person, already accomplished and illumined. And the last point that I want to make on this aspect of kind of the general sense of it is that it's to do with setting one's intentions and aim. To explore that just a bit, have you all heard the phrase "fake it till you make it"?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the essence. That's kind of the essence of what's being said here in the general overview of card number 1. In other words, this is someone who has already achieved a particular level of development. It's very, very high. And yet, by embracing the essence of this, by setting for oneself a kind of a spiritual aim and making it almost your God, really, then that embraces the essence of this card. And it's such an important topic. We'll do other evenings on setting aims in one's life, but that having something in front of you. And, you know, I mean, it occurs to me that so many people really do drift through life. And I would say that probably you were that way because you most likely wouldn't be here unless this was an accident. You just stumbled, you know, like, oh, clicked the wrong meetup or something like that. But, you know, most people are very, very content with just waking up at 6 or 5 or whatever and hauling themselves off to work and working 8 hours and coming home and, you know, watching a bit of TV and going to bed and rinse and repeat the next day, right? That's a very mechanical, very aimless life. And so on a personal development journey, it's extremely important to have something that you're always working towards. Okay, and so that's kind of the essence of this card. It's the card of the mental body. For those who have been to kind of past ones, you'll already have the reference as far as the mental body, but it's the higher aspect of the brain, of the mentality. Its essential function is towards self-connection and improving dynamics. What I mean by that is we have higher aspects in ourselves. Every human does. Every human being has a higher aspect, which has, you know, been called the soul and the spirit, or the mental body and the emotional body, or the astral body, or whatever names you want to put to it is fine. But we have these higher aspects to ourselves that most of the time the noise of our life prohibits us from actually being able to hear. They're already fully developed. They're already contain all of the wisdom that you need for your life. It's just we can't always hear them. And so one of the aims or one of the goals in this, one of the essential functions, is towards increasing that connection with those higher aspects of yourself. Right? Some disciplines call it your wise mind. I would say wise mind or wise mind and wise emotion, but it's all the terms aren't that relevant. And then the juggler has the skill to plant his overspill in others by way of mental projection. And this comes down to not only teaching or educating, but also healing. I know we have a lot of healers in this group, and you know the idea almost universally in healing is that you never heal from your own reserves, you heal from your excess, right? Because otherwise, if you're healing from your own reserves, in other words, I am a healer, instead of letting that healing force pass through you, or being generative in yourself and letting the spillover heal other people, you end up depleted and sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost certain every healer on here will understand and nod or agree with that. But it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing, okay? It's the same thing. There's an interesting notion that people always talk from their excess. They always talk from what it is they are unable to resolve or unable to contain in themselves. Yeah. So listening to people and listening to the things that they say gives you a whole lot of insight into what they're not able to hold on to. Now, there's also the aspect of intentionally not holding on to things, because there's a saying, let me see if I get this right. Whatever you possess and cannot give away possesses you. Right? That also speaks to that overflow.
Would you say that again, please?
Yeah. Whatever you possess and cannot give away possesses you.
Oh.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So I'm just kind of winding into the nature of this card. All right. And then next week, we're going to go with just 2 cards at a time. This has been a long kind of introduction. Yeah. Colors. The red pants are indicative of the personality in the person. And typically, it's the personality that everyone leads with, right? It's the personality or the general habits of life which drive a person all around in everything that they do. Okay, this is usually what overcomes a person's aim. You know, you may wake up tomorrow morning and set an aim or set an intention for the day, and by noon have completely forgotten it, this is the red pants in this aspect. Has to do with the moving center, for those of you familiar with that.
Red also stands for creativity.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah, the vibrance behind creativity for sure. Yeah.
exactly.
And so in the belt in here, you'll notice, and I'll pull the laser pointer back out, but you'll see a green band and a black band. The green in there is indicative of the energy given for physical action. When we breathe in electrically, we breathe in the color green is what it enters the body in, and then it filters down into the yellow, blue, red, and white functions or aspects inside someone. Okay, now
There's
the
no green
black.
chakra though.
Huh?
Sorry. I'm sorry, that doesn't correspond with the colors of the chakras
No.
at all.
It's a slightly different system. The chakras are based on the sevenfold system. This is based on the fivefold system of white, red, blue, yellow, green, indicating
Okay.
the pentagrammic alignment or the soul alignment of a person, as opposed
My first
to
exposure to that one.
yeah. Well, just keep showing up and you will. The black on the belt is representative of being able to absorb what isn't used. I'll give you a physical example, okay? If you find yourself very low on energy and you bring your hands together and cross your legs, you'll notice that after about 15 or so minutes, you feel less strained, less tired. It's called a keeper position, and it's similar to, you know, the old horseshoe magnets. They would put a bar, a steel bar on the ends of the horseshoe magnet to kind of keep that magnetic force inside. Instead of it diminishing over time. Same thing happens in the human complex, but that's along the lines of what the black belt represents in this, is that it is a reabsorption of whatever is still unused. And this speaks to the blue in the tunic, because that represents the essence, the essential nature of a person. Also the blue in the hat as well. Questions?
So would his pants also be poisonous?
I'm sorry, would his hands be poisonous?
No, would his pants, since they are red,
Yeah.
also
Yeah,
be
I do not
poisonous?
recommend eating them. Good point. Good point. Okay. The yellow, it's really hard to see actually in this picture, I realize, so I'll highlight it here, but the yellow around his
Kind of
throat.
orangey too. Mhm.
Yeah, it looks a bit orangey. I don't think it rendered very well. I can pull out the card in the actual deck. But it's around the thyroid in there, and that has to do with the higher emotional center. One thing that you can do from a healing standpoint, if you find someone is like feeling emotionally very low, very down, very heavy, is you can take your positive hand, which for ladies would be your left hand, for gents it would be your right hand, and you can, I don't know if you can see me, but you can do kind of a sweeping motion right in front of the throat. You can even do it to yourself and just kind of pull off static in there. You don't actually have to touch the throat, but you can pull off that excess energy in there, and it'll lighten up the emotions, kind of clean things up a bit.
Ooh,
Thanks for
I
that
like
one.
Hmm?
I used that earlier today.
Yeah. In fact, there's even a stronger exercise that I'll show you guys sometime. Yeah, you can pull away that kind of static. The white stripe here down the front of the chest actually speaks to the connections or essences or attendances that become attracted to a person's life. Believe me, when you begin a personal development journey, you begin to glow in the unseen worlds. And so many high things start to become attracted to you. I mean, literally, if you could see yourself as you become, we have these expressions like, I'm lit up about this, or, this feeling of inspiration. If you could see what you look like in the general darkness of the planet electrically, you're like a beacon. You're like absolutely stunning, glowing. And so this speaks to a person who already has this level of accomplishment and the various essences and attendances that are attracted to his or her life. By the way, this is gender neutral, even though he is demonstrated as a man. We can get into the reasons for that, but please do understand that. And then the shimmering background of the silver, shimmering silver background is indicative of what's called the silver temple. And this is where we could almost spend probably a year talking about some of these things, but I will give you the very brief version of it. Has to do with a sun level type of connection, in that the sun is not, neither emits light nor radiates heat. It actually has a very cool aspect to it. It's only when the sunlight comes to planetary level that it takes on the appearance of heat, right? If you were without an atmosphere, I guess scientifically speaking, without an atmosphere, you wouldn't be able to feel the heat, yeah, of the sun. But the connection to silver, it is one of the higher religious essences along with
Almost
gold.
out there.
And you can actually detect the nature of a particular religion by whether it is more of a silver-based or a gold-based religion. Examples of gold-based religions would be like Buddhism, for instance. Okay, they're very sedating. Yes, does that make sense? We'll get into that more. I realize.
Yes, in my past, I found when people wear a lot of gold, they usually have really down energies, and when they change it from gold to silver, their energies and attitudes change tremendously.
You are so right in that. In fact, there's a really cool example of that when the Tutankhamun exhibit, the Egyptian Tutankhamun exhibit, was on tour, and they went, I think it was in New York. I can't remember where this took place, but anyway, it actually took place in several different areas. But, you know, of course they have people guarding this stuff because it's thousands of pounds of gold just for starters. But Egypt had such a strong gold influence, and I'm talking about the electrical unseen worlds influence, not just the physical gold, which is its external manifestation. But gold has a very anesthetizing property about it, especially the energy of gold has a very anesthetizing property about it. And so they would have to change out guards every 2 hours because the guards literally could not keep their eyes open, standing in that atmosphere that was so permeated with that Egyptian gold, the essence of what Egypt was at the time. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That is very, very much in line with the natures of silver and gold. Okay, let's talk about the symbols that he's juggling in here. The blue triangle, well, I'm going to read it this way. He seeks for cosmic establishment, that's represented by the blue triangle, to appear in his life, which is the symbol of the Ankh or Venus, in his strength, which is represented by the symbol of Mars, and in his religious considerations, using the symbol of the two triangles there, Seal of Solomon. And then moving on to Saturn, while using discipline to resist the negative aspects. And again, Jupiter, talking about the silver chalice, which is a certain type of head development where when the pineal gland switches on inside the head, begins to radiate this sort of silver energy into your aura. It's the silver chalice through an expedient mind. So it's a message as far as the energies at play. But what's important to understand, connecting back to a person's aim, in the sense that these are just the energies at play that he has chosen for that particular day. It doesn't necessarily mean that these have to be in, you know, if you pull this card in the tarot, right, and you look at it, you can actually use these symbols as a guide for one's development journey. Kate, do you want me to go back one so that you can see the first three symbols?
No, I got them. I actually
got them. Okay, great.
Yes, thank you, Pierce.
Yes, you're welcome. But what this speaks to is that this is a moment in time for the juggler. This is not the entire journey. And when you're applying this in your own practice, in your own life, you set your intention, you set your aim, and then you begin to seek out and collect the various forces and influences that will augment and assist in that aim. So that's the message in there. It's not enough to just go, here's my aim, and then not understand what is going to assist you in that aim, is it? You know, so many times people have intentions of, I'm going to do this with myself, but then they never collect the necessary ingredients. And we know from the physical world, I mean, you can't bake a cake unless you have all the ingredients. It's not good enough to just go, I want cake, and then not pull in the ingredients, is it? Yeah, so that's what this is speaking of.
Why the Seal of Solomon? Because at one point,
Sure.
it seemed years ago, there was a reference to Kabbalah. And I thought that the Tarot might have been at some point interconnected with Kabbalah.
It is, and here's what I will say about that. So first of all, the Seal of Solomon is not of Jewish origin, but it was adopted into it. Kabbalah is actually not of Jewish origin either. It was originally from Chaldea and Babylonia in the time of the Second Temple period that, they got exposed to Zoroastrianism primarily. Which introduced these esoteric symbols and concepts into what's now known as esoteric Judaism or Kabbalah. But yeah, the symbol itself, if you look at the nature of it, you've got the green triangle going down. And what that speaks of is the descending force that's coming into the planet that has this regenerative, creative nature to it, right? It's the force of what drives conscious evolution on the planet. And then you have the upwards pointing triangle being yellow, having that higher aspect of the emotional connection up back into the universe. And so the reason why it's referred to in this context as having to do with one's religious connections is because it's not just a one-way connection. It's what's descending into the planet and what we're striving for. There's religion, as in organized religion, and then there's religion as in the essence or the various essences that have shown up on the planet that are sent out as a signal in creation to try to stimulate human development or personal development. Well, the early Christians weren't Christians. They were Jews that were following someone who was lit up and inspired by something, yes? Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. He was just lit up by something. Yeah.
So does that make the card subjective or objective?
Well, good question. I'll let you answer that one for me, because I am so into the symbols and the colors and the numbers and have spent many years seeking and trying to understand them. For me, it's very.
Oh no, it's my question for you. How do you see the card? Do you see it as a subjective or objective card?
I see all of them as objective. Yeah. And now we'll talk about the number 1. This is tough because in actuality, 1 doesn't exist here. 1 is an illusion. There is nothing that you can point to that is actually singular because we live inside the bubble, don't we? We live inside the universe. The term universe means 1, but 1 one entails everything, doesn't it, in the context of the universe? But some of the numbers.
I have a question.
Okay.
You said the Kabbalah was not Jewish?
It's okay. So Kabbalah.
The word Kabbalah actually is the word. It means tradition in Jewish.
Yes, it does. Reception. And what I mean is that the origins of it were not in the Jewish religion. They were brought into it during the Second Temple period from the Zoroastrian and Chaldean and Babylonian influences. But you're right.
They might have been influencing it, but
the Yetzirah and so on and so forth. Of course, like the Zohar, all 23 volumes of it are going through, the Torah and whatnot. So it's in that context. You're absolutely right. The Kabbalah is part of the Jewish religion, but its origins predate Judaism.
So why would they use a symbol of Judaism to represent that if it wasn't Jewish? I'm just confused.
Well, that symbol has not always been the symbol for Judaism. In fact, symbols in Judaism in the early times, in the Proto-Canaanite times and so on and so forth, were actually prohibited.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you're referring. There is that painting that kind of has that tree of life idea on it, but I think there's only 9. If I remember, because I think like the tree of life symbols we have only have 9 for the Babylonian times.
The Sephiroth?
Yeah, I think there are only 9 at that point. I think maybe Judaism maybe.
No,
turned it
it's
to
the
10.
same. They still have 9. Doth, the invisible one, is 10, but there's 9. And the Seal of Solomon was Jewish, so I'm still confused. Not that I care about the concept, but it seems odd to not have it attributed to that for me.
Fair
That's
enough.
all.
I would suggest that we come back to it because I don't want to
Okay.
necessarily, go into that, but
Okay.
this is not me. Hold on one second, Karina, I see you. This is not me being dismissive of that. It's just that we would end up talking about something else entirely instead of
Okay.
pursuing this line. So please, do not feel dismissed about this. Bring it up again, and I'm happy to go through it.
Okay.
I did an entire work into Kabbalah, actually. Text me on Meetup if you're interested, and I can make sure that you get a copy of it. It might actually help a bit. Yes, Karina.
I was just going to say the symbol predated Judaism, just like the symbol of the cross predated Christianity.
Yeah, right, true. That's very true. Okay, one other prominent number in here, and there are many, many others, obviously, but one other prominent number is 7. And 7 always speaks of octaves, and I'm talking about the 7 symbols in here. It's an octave of expression, and you'll notice if you're a fan of musical theory, where the missing semitone is this starts at do, re, mi, and then there would be a gap in here. And so I'm just going to leave that as kind of something to ponder, why this would be directly above the juggler's head in that context. And then, of course, fa, sol, la, si, continuing it on. And so what this speaks of is this aspect of 1 and the fact that there are these symbols in here that represent an octave. Speaks to something's allness and its nothingness. That's what an octave is, right? You start off at 1 note and you either double it or half it, but it's that progression or degression in there. So in the juggler, a life of accomplishment is what's implied when you read the symbols a certain way, but the idea of an octave also expresses the opposite. Okay, and this is where I was talking about the thesis and antithesis. The Fool card, the negation card in this, is really the opposite of a personal development journey. It is a journey of stagnation, or I guess you wouldn't even call it a journey. This is personal stagnation, right? It has the message, the note, proceed no further. And it's interesting too that it's using a cultural symbol instead of a religious, natural, or esoteric one. I mean this, right? This means stop in our society and in most cultures actually, but that's more of a cultural type of symbol. And then I found it interesting that only half of the face is being demonstrated here, and that ties into something called lopsided development. And what this refers to is when someone does so much to increase, for example, their knowledge, that they neglect their actual level of being. What I mean by that is you need to have this kind of process in a personal development journey of you gain a little bit of knowledge and then you apply that to elevate your being. And then once your being, kind of surpasses your level of knowledge, you go back and forth and back and forth. And our society in particular really does encourage lopsided development. There are literally walking encyclopedias out there that can tell you anything you want to know about any religion that's ever existed in time, and all of their theories and their natures and habits and all that type of stuff, but who doesn't actually have any content other than intellectual, right? Can't actually do anything with that. Yeah. So this is this is the idea of the 1 and the 0. And I know I spent more time on the juggler than the card of negation or the 0 card, but it's this thesis antithesis aspect in there. All right, and we have gone about 10 or so minutes over, so if anyone does need to drop off, I completely respect that, and also thank you for staying a little longer than I anticipated. And for those of you who want to stay on for another few minutes and just kind of have a general Q&A about this, you know, the things that you heard tonight or those sorts of things, we can do that for maybe another 3 or 4 minutes. Any pressing questions? No? Got it? Everyone's got it? Good.
I'm going to have to take off, but thank you so much.
You are very
And
welcome.
stay well, everyone.
Yeah.
You as well.
Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Me
Thanks.
too.
Yeah,
Bye
thank you.
now. Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Yes, I have to go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, again, I'll reiterate that sentiment. Please stay well. And I do plan on doing this every Thursday, life permitting. So look for other meetups that indicate, you know, the next series in this.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Have a good night.
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Good night. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.